Henry Berg was born in New York in 1813. During Berg's early adulthood, he inherited a good sum of money from his father's shipyard. This inheritance meant that Berg did not have to work, which allowed him to travel around the globe with his wife Catherine. In the course of his travels, he saw many acts of cruelty against animals. Berg made a lot of connections with people during his travels and was a wealthy, respected man in his time. His friend William Seward was a member of Abraham Lincoln's cabinet and helped Berg get appointed acting vice consul in Russia by the president in 1862. During the 1860s, animals were used mainly for entertainment and work purposes. Events such as animal fighting, though they weren't new, were very popular after the Civil War ended because it was cheap entertainment. In order to increase profit margins, horses were not given breaks or a sufficient amount of water, and carts were intentionally overloaded to reduce the number of horses a business had to maintain. These are just two examples of animals being exploited and overworked. During Berg's time in Russia between 1862 and 1864, he witnessed many acts of cruelty against cart horses, and he once stopped a carriage driver from beating his fallen horse. Witnessing these events sparked his urge to help animals. Berg resigned from his duties as acting vice consul in Russia in 1864 because Berg disliked the living conditions. 3 months after returning to America, Berg and his wife took a trip to Europe. While the couple was in Spain, Berg attended a bullfight and was disgusted by the way the bulls were being slaughtered. From Spain, Berg and his wife traveled to Britain to meet with an old friend. While there, he met with the president and secretary of the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, or ASPCA. After meeting with the ASPCA, Berg was so inspired by the group's ambitions that he decided to start his own organization for the prevention of cruelty to animals in America. Upon returning to New York in January 1866, Berg drafted the Declaration of the Rights of Animals. Henry Berg scheduled a meeting with the New York State Legislature on February 8, 1866. At this meeting at Clinton Hall, he made his case on behalf of the, quote, mute servants of mankind, unquote. Berg argued that animal rights was an issue that, quote, crossed party lines and class boundaries, unquote. After Berg's presentation, dignitaries who agreed with him signed his Declaration of the Rights of Animals. His detailed narration of the barbarity that animals have suffered persuaded the New York State Legislature to pass a charter, including the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, making them an official organization on April 10, 1866. Berg's new role as president of the society came with many conflicts. He often received death threats, was publicly ridiculed, and was given the nickname the Great Meddler. Berg was a very hands-on president, and he often intervened when he witnessed acts of animal cruelty, which on occasion led to being physically attacked himself. Only 9 days after the ASPCA became an official organization, Berg pressured the legislature to pass the first anti-cruelty law in the United States, which prohibited overworking animals, depriving them of necessary sustenance, and inflicting suffering. This law gave the ASPCA the authority needed to make arrests and fine animal abusers, which created conflict between members of the society and people who benefited from animal abuse. At first, they focused on helping horses and livestock. Starting in 1867, they operated the nation's first ambulance for horses injured through abuse or accidents. Following the success of their first years as an organization, they branched out to focus on other animals like cats and dogs. Berg fought relentlessly to end dog and cockfighting. Although it was illegal, the New York Police Department wasn't motivated to enforce it, so Berg worked with them to make several arrests of frequent dog fighters. The ASPCA was making great strides in the fight for animal justice by raiding animal fights, regularly trying to end vivisection, inspecting slaughterhouses, fighting companies that exploited animals, amongst other things. By the end of the 1870s, Berg and the ASPCA had inspired 25 states to pass their own anti-cruelty laws. In 1873, the nation's first federal animal welfare legislation, known as the 28-Hour Law, was passed, which provided strict guidelines to transportation of livestock via railroad. Berg's work with the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals made him a public figure who was openly willing to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. A woman living in New York became aware of a child being abused next door. Her dying wish was for someone to help the child. The woman couldn't find anyone who was willing to intervene, so she contacted Berg and asked him to help the frequently abused small animal next door. Berg took immediate action. He later found out that the small animal was actually a small child. Berg's decision to help the child was the first step in starting the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children in 1874. Berg acted as one of the group's first vice presidents. On March 12, 1888, as a storm whipped the city and gales tore the roofs off of houses, New York's overworked horses struggled to pull carloads of people through the snow. But for once, after 2 decades of policing the streets on their behalf, Berg was not there to protect them. In the early hours of the morning, Henry Berg had died. By the time of Berg's death in 1888, 37 out of the 38 states in the Union had passed anti-cruelty laws, and almost half had prevention organizations of their own. As of today, the ASPCA is still a successful, well-known organization and is one of the largest humane societies in the world.
The ASPCA has done an incredible job going all the way back to the 1800s when horses were abused and living in horrid conditions. They stepped in to make sure and to speak up for these animals that did not have a voice.
They have rescued over 11,000 animals from dangerous situations, they have granted $14 million to animal welfare organizations, and they have over 2 million supporters across the country. The Society still follows Henry Berg's mission to, quote, provide effective means for the prevention of cruelty to animals throughout the United States, unquote. The ASPCA has become a, quote, common presence in the face of natural disasters, puppy mill busts, dog fighting raids, and other forms of cruelty intervention, unquote. In 1993, they initiated the use of microchips for animal identification, helping reunite hundreds of animals with their owners. In 2013, they partnered with the New York Police Department, after which animal cruelty arrests increased by over 200%. Thanks to the dedication of Henry Berg, the ASPCA has become a beacon of hope for animals in the United States. Berg's hard work and determination has paid off in the form of a successful, long-lasting organization dedicated to the prevention of cruelty to animals. According to ASPCA staff, quote, we know that we are closer than ever to achieving our ultimate goal, a nation free from cruelty to animals, unquote.